So how was that for everybody? Good. Did, thank you for saying that. So did you get tastes of the qualities of mind, really settling deep, of really touching into impermanence, the insubstantiality of the body, and then into non-self, this progression? Good. Good. I'm going to step through all of those step by step. I'm going to take us through the steps we went through in the Anapanasati Sutta. But first of all, I'm just going to put that back in context.
Gareth, we're
Um,
having issues hearing you.
you can't hear me? Winnie, did you say you're having difficulty hearing me? Can you hear me okay on Zoom?
I can hear you. There's like a little bit of a background
Oh, I
buzz,
know what it
but
is. Is that better? Excellent. Thank you. I had the original sound for the musicians is on, not off. Thank you. All right. So you all got a taste of what we were going through and what I was pointing at with the guided meditation, which is great. Which is great. So I'm going to, as we go through the sutta in detail, I'm going to talk about each of the elements we went through. I'm going to bring us back, first of all, and just um, very briefly recap what the sutta is. We're going through a whole series of presentations here, talks about breath meditation. And this is the second talk on the Anapanasati Sutta. We talked about it last week, and we did the guided meditation on the first half. This week, we've basically gone through the second half. Um, So the Anapanasati Sutta, in breath, out breath, mindfulness of, what Anapanasati means. And it is, in the Pali Canon, it is the single central source for breath meditation. It's the main teaching on breath meditation. And it's one of the most important breath meditation teachings in the whole Buddhist tradition. But it's not complete. It was never intended to be complete. Buddha's individual teachings were not complete. He taught within a bigger context. So when we go through any of these instructions in the sutta, we need to recognize that it needs to be fleshed out. It needs to be fleshed out from different sources. So source one is internally within the sutta itself. So there are these 16 steps. We did 8 tonight, but there's 16 steps in total. That fits in the context of a bigger picture where it talks about the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the 7 factors of awakening and where this was happening. And then there's the entry point of finding a calm and secluded abiding under an abandoned hut and so forth. So that's context. Another area of context is the other suttas. Maybe the most important other sutta is the Satipatthana Sutta, which is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. That's what we're going to be starting on next week. That'll probably take us, I'm guessing, 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, something like that. But we'll do that next week. But the Satipatthana Sutta, well, to start with, it defines mindfulness as ardent, alert, and mindful. So mindfulness isn't this modern day passive present awareness, which is what kind of comes up in a lot of self-help kind of environments. That's not what Buddhism was teaching at all. Satipatthana is ardent, alert, and mindful. Sati, smrti, ardent. So smrti in that context, mindfulness, is remembering from the past, remembering what we did that worked, remembering what we did that didn't work, recollection. So it's bringing the past forward to the present. Alert is being here now, what is often just taken as mindfulness, but that's just alertness. And then ardency is the effort of working on this, which is what do we need to do? What can we do? And what do we need to do that is skillful, that will help us release suffering? Let's look into the future. It's changing karma going forward. So mindfulness is this much broader picture. That you don't pick that up in the sutta, you pick that up elsewhere. Which also says one of the other things that this should be taken in the context of, all the people who were hanging out practicing this were hanging out and practicing it with this guy called the Buddha. They had a teacher. They had somebody to help them understand when they got stuck. And precisely the subtlety and complexity of all of these teachings is because Buddha was responding moment by moment to all of the questions and all of the particular happenings of all the different practitioners. So that takes us to, well, so there's one more, which is this sutta, like all suttas, most suttas, takes for granted a community of practitioners who you're engaging in practice with. So I could go much deeper into any of those. Actually, I will talk about one. There's one sutta that I made a note of, which is Samyutta Nikaya 4710. And this one says that you're practicing along, you're going through all the steps of mindfulness and breathing meditation, and then the body becomes toxic or unpleasant in some way. I can't remember what it says. But then it says, and there's a sluggishness in awareness, and the mind becomes scattered. And at that point, bring to mind any inspiring theme, and that will cultivate and nurture, bring delight, then rapture, then pleasure, then concentration. And when there's concentration, then we can start to withdraw, and then we find ourselves mindful and at ease. So what that is saying is, when we stall on this particular method, go pick another one up, one that's going to gladden us. And we did a little bit of that in the middle here. It was like this, do some gratitude. Could have said Brahma Viharas. We could have just stayed with the pleasantness of breathing. There's lots of ways of doing that, but do something that brings gladness to mind. And that will help bring us back up. It will enliven us, bring us stability, concentration, and then we can move back into the practice more fully. So the body of teachings here itself is telling us to experiment, to try different things, right? All right, so I'm just going to step through what we did tonight. First two tetrads, there's 4 tetrads, 16 steps in 4 tetrads. The first tetrad is simply breathing and body. It's calming the body. The second tetrad is feeling tones. And specifically what it does, it takes us into, as we settle, this sense of piti, of joy, arises just naturally, spontaneously. As the body calms down, obstructions move out of the way, and this sense of joy can just arise. And it's more of a quality than a feeling. And as we continue to settle, that eventually dissipates, and we're left with just this sense of peace. And then there's this intentional calming of these feeling tones. So that's the first 2 tetrads. What we're working with tonight are the second 2 tetrads, which are the mind and the dharmas. Now, what I did tonight, rather than, I went relatively quickly to get you to a stable and settled place so we could move into the mind practice. And what I did there was took us through this step-by-step body relaxation from top to bottom. Very effective. And I find that moves more quickly than going through the steps of the breathing meditation, which can take us to the same place. It is also creating a much clearer path to get the mind settled out of the head down, to get ourselves out of the head space and into the body space, which is really important. So I took advantage of, if you like, one of the permissions that's granted here in the sutras that I just talked about, which is draw on other sources. So I drew on other sources and I did that in order to make that happen. So we did something else there that I did intentionally to get us out of being stuck on physicality, which was I shifted from the sense of touch and the experience of contact to the nature of experiencing itself. Did you get a sense of that? Was that a shift you were able to make? Yeah. So it's a big shift. So the word that Melinda was talking about was faculty, which I used in that guided meditation. Shift from the experience to the faculty of touch. The fact, the eye faculty is that which sees. It's not the seeing, it's not the object, it's that which sees. To say it's the eye is not quite right, because it's not the eye. The eye is a ball, it's a sphere with a hole in the front and a retina at the back. That's a physical eye. There's a faculty of seeing that's associated with the eye and the brain. Right? So there's a faculty of touch, which is the ability to touch, the ability to have that experience. So there's a quality of seeing that isn't the seen. There's a quality of hearing that isn't the heard. If you get used to playing with these faculties, then what you realize is hearing, we hear noises, but that faculty of hearing is always there. When we're sitting and it's silent, the faculty of hearing is still present. If it wasn't, when a phone rang, we wouldn't notice it, right? The faculty of hearing is still there, even in silence. It's not in the hearing, it's the faculty. So the shift I was asking you to look at was to shift away from the sense of touch itself and the qualities of the sense of touch to that which can do the touching. It's alert, it's alive, it's awake all the time, whether there's touch happening or not. If you're asleep, it's asleep, except somebody smacks you upside the head, you wake up, right? So that faculty is there. So it's shifting to being in touch with that faculty. That shift was to allow us to then move to the mind, which is altogether more subtle than the body. And so skip those first two tetrads, and in the mind start noticing the qualities of the mind. Qualities of the mind. Is it rough? Is it smooth? Is it refined? Is it coarse? Is it open? The mind, the natural state of the mind, the natural awakened state of the mind, the natural free state of the mind. You are already free. All of us are already free. We just pile stuff in and on top to obstruct that. The natural state of the mind is vast, open, and spacious. It's the big concert hall without anything in it that I described. It's just vast and open. Yes, we put stuff in it. We can use stuff. We can put cushions in here and sit on them. We can put a computer in here so I can talk to people on the computer. But it's just stuff in the room. The room is the natural state. So when we look at our mind, is it in this natural, open, vast place? Or is it cluttered? Is it constricted? Have we pulled the walls in? You know, like that scene in one of the early Star Wars movies, we're in that cesspool place and the walls are closing in. And they put that steel rod across to try and keep the walls out, and they can't, right? Is that where our mind is? Or is it open? Is it spacious? Or have we just piled junk and kleptomania and boxes and online shopping and just masses of stuff in the room? We can see the quality of our mind. Explore the quality of our mind. And then gladdening the mind. And that gladdening the mind, there's one of the other things about this sutta, about the lack of the incompleteness of the sutta. One of the elements of incompleteness of the sutta is there are many different ways of reading this. There are 16 steps in 4 tetrads. Buddhadasa, who wrote a wonderful commentary on this, goes through it step by step. He does all 16 in sequence, and he says that's the only way to do it. You've got to do it that way. I absolutely revere the guy. He's wonderful. That's what he says. Tanisara Bhikkhu, another guy I absolutely revere. I spent 2 weeks in his monastery in California. Great guy, great teacher. He says these 4 steps, these 4 tetrads, they're all really doing the same thing. They go. So the later ones go deeper, but they're all basically following the same trajectory. They open up, then they explore, and then they calm. Each of them. So you can like look at them together. You can step from one tetrad to the other. There's just this flow across the 4, which makes complete sense. Thich Nhat Hanh says, pick any one of the 16 steps you like and work with that. They're all right. But what I did here, the overlap here is this gladdening. It is very much like that step in the second tetrad where piti comes forward. We notice the feeling turns and then we start settling and this joy arises. And as the joy arises, it can be very strong and then it subsides into this peace. And then that peace allows an opening, allows a calming and a broad opening. So we were doing that with our feelings, these feeling turns last week. We're doing it here with the quality of the mind this week. So we gladden it. That naturally causes concentration to strengthen. Concentration, I think I've talked about this before. Our minds are normally scattered, bouncing from subject to subject. We don't notice it, but it's just what they do. When we sit on the cushion, we start paying attention, we start to notice we can't stay on the breath. We're on the breath, and then we're thinking about our children. Then we're thinking about our work. Then we're thinking about our grandparents. Then we're thinking about cutting the grass, and I need to cook the dinner. Boom, 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 boom. Utterly scattered. As we cultivate practice, it starts to become more concentrated. And with continued practice, and if you go on a retreat, extended practice, those periods of concentration become longer. And they become stronger. And the separation between subject and object starts to fade. And then you get this unified mind where there's no separation between subject and object. It's just the trajectory of concentration. And these steps will just naturally help that concentration strengthen. So as concentration gets stronger, less distractions, less furniture in the room, less clutter. Mind becomes more open, more spacious, clearer. This is the liberated mind. Buddhadasa talks about the liberated mind as being as the mind being free of the 4 clingings. So this is one of those things in dependent origination. You have feeling tones, which is this first pleasant, unpleasant, neutral, that first contact. From feeling tones, we want or we want to reject. We want or we don't want. This is craving. And then when we satisfy our craving, which is what our society tells us to do, it says, you will be happy if you satisfy your cravings. It's a lie. It's actually not a lie. A lie is intentional. It's misunderstanding. Let's just call it that. It's not true. Satisfying your cravings just amplifies your cravings. It's feeding the monster. But if we feed the monster, then what happens is clinging. I'm not going to give this up. And the 4 clingings in Buddhism are clinging to sensual pleasures. So if there's something we like, that bowl of ice cream, that massage, if there's something we enjoy and we just keep on going back to. Views. Oh my goodness. How we like our views. Political views. World Cup's going on. Favorite teams. Whether somebody should have been sent off or not. Whether somebody was offside. Boy, do we hang on to those. Our fashions. Who are good people? Who are bad people? Which religion is right? Which religion is wrong? All of these views. Oh my goodness. So much up here. Habits and practices. This, when it was originally put into the teaching, was to do with spiritual and religious habits and practices. So a lot of it was going to be around like the animal sacrifices of Hinduism, for example, of not Hinduism, of early Brahmanism. But it also applies to, the little rituals we have. Like in a couple of months, we'll have, which one is it? I always get Labor and Memorial Day. It's Labor Day, isn't it? We'll have Labor Day in September. This is a ritual. We just had the 4th of July, a ritual. Right? These are all rituals of identity and of meaning and of purpose. The little daily rituals we have when we get up, and maybe we have a little prayer routine or a little meditation routine. Not all, many of them are probably really good things, but if we turn them into just fixed rituals, we get stuck on them. So the third is this habits and practices. And then the fourth is a sense of self. We'll get back to the sense of self in a minute, because that's when I started to unpack in this guided meditation, the sense of a fixed me. Something tied to what the 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness, the elements that I put together to say, this is me, this is mine, this is what I am. So these are the 4 clingings. So the liberated mind, the mind that the spacious mind that we're cultivating, isn't holding on to any of those. And you know this when you experience it. Hopefully, as we touched into this, if you reflect back on it, you can recognize that in that spaciousness, these were not there. True peace, true freedom. There's nobody who's free. I say, you are already free. There's a little bit of a linguistic catch there, because there's no you to be free. And when you realize the truth of this, you're not there anymore. There's just freedom. And there's an ability to use these elements, to put these elements to work, to do something in the world to help others. So you can kind of assemble a me at will to do something and then let it go. But there's no attachment to this. It's not a thing. It's just purely function. So the last tetrad, the steps of the last tetrad, which are about the dharmas, and in the Satipatthana Sutta, it goes through all the lists, like the 4 noble truths and the hindrances, which are the obstacles that show up in our practice. Goes through lots of stuff like that. Those are the dharmas. So this is being mapped to that. But here it's really, this is the section of this sutta which dives into the deep insight practice. The first 3, there's a lot more around the calming practices there. And we talked about you need to have both calming and insight. Calming allows the body to settle, allows peace to emerge, allows pleasant feelings to start happening. But if that's all we do, we'll have a really beautiful sit. And then we'll get up and we'll go out into the world. And the next time something shows up that's difficult, we'll behave just as we always did. Because nothing's changed. We just had a really pleasant vacation looking at the scenery of a cool mind. And now we put that down and we go and engage in the same old nonsense. Nothing changed. Calm is necessary because with calming, we can actually start to see more clearly. We can see how habit patterns arise here, how craving and clinging arise here. And as we start to see that, we can start to see through it and let it go and learn from that, so that when we get up off the cushion and go out, the same stuff happens. It's like, oh, I don't have to do that, do I? Okay. Because you're not attached to it in the same way. So the fourth tetrad takes us much more intentionally through the insight piece of this. And it does so kind of following the steps of the Four Noble Truths, or the duties of the Four Noble Truths. So very quickly, because I want to use these as I go through it. The Four Noble Truths, and this is not to get nerdy, but I'll tell you this and then I'll go through how I use it here. So the Four Noble Truths are that there is dukkha, suffering. That's what there is. We experience that. That there is a cause, that it's possible to end it, and it's the path to end it. So the duties are, there is suffering. That needs to be understood. That there is suffering needs to be fully understood, what that is, what this dukkha is. The cause of it needs to be fully abandoned. We need to completely let go of what causes dukkha. That it's possible to end it. There needs to be the duty there is release. We need to completely let go, release suffering. And the path to end it, which is the Noble Eightfold Path, needs to be cultivated. So these are the four duties. So the first of these four steps in this last tetrad is impermanence. It's there for everything. Everything is impermanent. But in this practice, in this particular sutta, the place that it's most obvious to go, since it's a sutta about breathing, is to look at the impermanence of breath. And hopefully, you nodded when I asked you earlier, and a few little nods now. Hopefully, you got a sense of impermanence of the breath. This breath is just constantly moving. There's no fixed nature to this breath at all. And when we look at it really closely, we go beyond there being no fixed nature. We realize it's not really there at all. There's an experiencing here, but what are we experiencing? Actually, what's happening is electrical signals are being picked up, are being created in the body. They're being centered along the nerves into the brain. And the brain uses those electrical signals to create a simulation, aka fantasy, aka potentially completely unrelated image to what was going on out here. You have no idea what's going on out here. All you have is your little mental representation of perception, right? That's all we have. It's wonderful, but that's what we have. So what is this breath? Impermanent, and there's nothing there to hold on to. Hold on to it. So, so let's just stick with the breath. The perception as it relates to the breath. I'm going to go back to the. I'm going to do this in two ways. I'm going to go to the aggregates, and then I'm going to go to I'm going to go to the aggregates first, and I'll move on from there. So, from the standpoint of the aggregates, which is a stacked, 5 stacked elements, the Buddha said, and he came up with this in the context of northern India 2,500 years ago, where the prevailing belief system was there is an Atman. You have an Atman, you have an Atman, and so forth. Right? We've all got this little Atman inside. And the purpose of our spiritual practice is for this Atman to be liberated from this corpse and to be reunited with big A Atman, with Brahman, with Ishvara, right? It's this reunification. And then that's moksha, that's liberation. And Buddha said, no, I've looked and I can't find this Atman. In fact, quite the opposite. Precisely by recognizing there is no such thing, I was able to find freedom. So he came up with this system of the skandhas simply as a way of demonstrating that's all we are. There is no Atman in here. It's just this form, physical stuff. There's feelings. When I touch something, it feels pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. There's perception. What do I do with that? Pleasant, that's really nice. That's smooth. That's warm. Oh my goodness, it's square. It's got nice edges. It's got a shiny screen. I can see people on it. This must be really valuable and really useful. It's a computer. Look at that. Wow, I'm going to call that a computer. Suddenly it's a thing. Perception. Where did that come from? Up here. Perception. And then the next one is intention or fabrication. Different traditions look at it a little differently, but it's what we do with that. I really like this. If you do anything to take this away from me, I'll be angry. If you give me a nice little red thing to stick in the side so my headset works, really happy. Right, so there's an intention, there's another layer of construction that sits on top of this fabrication. And then the last one is this consciousness itself. Consciousness is what happens when eye faculty meets objective eye, then there's seeing. Seeing is moment after moment of cognitive experience. There's not continuity of seeing, there's a moment of seeing, and a moment of seeing, and a moment of seeing. These moments of experience, these are conscious moments of consciousness. Happens with the eye, happens with the ear, happens with touch, taste, smell, happens with the mind, moments of mental activity. Objects of mind are mental objects. So, that cushion is a mental object. My perceptions become mental objects. And those then become the objects of mind. So mind gets this self-referential nature. So the 5 externally facing senses have objects outside. The mind kind of creates its own objects, which actually is where sense of time comes from, because objects can be past or future. The 5 senses don't have that. So that's this perception is how we're constructing reality. Does that make sense? So what we have with the breath is a perception of the breath. That's all we have. What is it we're holding on to? Just this perception. So where is the self? So where I went next in our guided meditation was bringing us back deep to the body, to the ground, to look at this sense of solidity. In the classic teaching, form, that first stack in the aggregates, is made up of earth, water, fire, and air. Now, that's not some idiotic Stone Age saying of that's what the world's really made of. That's not what that means at all. These are qualities. They were always meant to be qualities, and we can pejoratively look back at it and project something that wasn't there. This is the sense of solidity, of firmness. It's the experience of solidity. Fire is the experience of warmth. It's also the experience of cold, of temperature gradient, of fluctuation in temperature. So these elements, that's the way to be worked with them. And they are elements that can be used in meditation. So we were using that, saying this sense of solidity. Where is it? What is it? And in the same way that you can't find your breath, you really can't find this sense of solidity. When you're wandering around right now, we're all, our minds are very active, our bodies are moving around, we're much more engaged in the world, much more caught up in this body. We've accepted this body as a reality at this point. And from this place, it's kind of inconceivable to think of this as anything other than this is really pretty solid. But when we're meditating and you drop everything, you intentionally relax the body down to the base of the body, you experience the body disappearing. There's no experience of the body. Where is the body? And then you come back, it's like, well, that was nonsense. The body's right here. But you experienced complete inability to contact the body. So what are you actually experiencing when you experience this solidity? You're experiencing a construct, a fabrication, perception, right? It's not a reality, not a solid reality. Solid, excuse the pun. So explored that with a couple of the elements. um, so the impermanence is looking at one of the definitions of suffering Buddhism is seeing as permanent that which is impermanent. So to see impermanence is to understand the First Noble Truth, understanding the truth of impermanence, that there is nothing permanent. When you get impermanence, that naturally takes you to non-self or emptiness. Same thing. Emptiness in the early canon is used differently, but in later Buddhist teachings, emptiness really means non-self. So impermanence naturally leads to non-self, which is what we were just talking about. Non-self, there's a total loosening of any sense of holding on there. There's nothing to hold on to. This is abandonment. This is that second duty, abandoning the cause of suffering, which is holding on to things. And then the third, the last two steps are about cultivating this releasing. So that's probably enough to say about those last two steps. The cessation, which is this perception of continuity, stops. It's a perception. That flame in that candle is moving, right? Or is it? There's a koan, Huineng, who was the sixth patriarch of Chinese Chan, came across two monks who were arguing. They were in the temple, and there was a flag up there. And one of them said, "The flag's moving." And the other one said, "No, it's not. The wind's moving." And go back and forth. And Huineng just looked at them and shook his head and said, "It's not the flag that's moving. It's not the wind that's moving. It's your mind that's moving." Profoundly true. That flame is entirely perception. What you're seeing is a very different flame than I'm seeing. It's a flame that's the product of your individual life experience and the karma that came into the creation to enable your life. You're experiencing a completely different flame than I am. And moment by moment by moment, it's a different flame. Where's the continuity in that flame? It's a bunch of red hot atoms that float off. The wax burns, the oxygen is consumed, gone. Totally new flame. No continuity there at all. Just moment by moment by moment, candle burning. We have this sense of continuity we create. And when you really see through impermanence and you really see through non-self, that sense of continuity ends. It's a fiction. And it's not a denial of being in the world. It's just a breakdown of this sense of being caught in this inevitable cause and effect. Every moment is fresh. The Anapanasati Sutta, which we spent 2 weeks exploring, is a stepwise progression that takes us from those first early stages of just coming into the breath and using that initial breath awareness to start to calm the body all the way through to profound insight into emptiness, profound insight into non-self, and complete freedom, realizing the freedom that is our original nature. It's a very profound teaching. And then it goes on to say, when we practice the Anapanasati Sutta, we're basically also practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness and the 7 factors of awakening. And the 7 factors of awakening is another one of these step-by-step processes that takes you all the way to awakening, reinforcing the point. So I've talked for a long while again today. I'm going to stop talking, and we'll have a few minutes just chatting among ourselves.